A message from the blue marble. How humanity is learning to listen to its planet, and why it matters more than you know. A public interest executive brief on the quantum state network and the Seeley geodetic architecture. Written by Chris D. Seeley, inventor, independent researcher, and Freemason, June 2026. For everyone. This document is written for curious adults, college students, scientists, policymakers, students of the mysteries, and anyone who has ever looked at the night sky and felt the question rise in them. The technical white papers exist. This is the human one. A word of honor before we begin. I am a Freemason. That means something to me beyond the handshake and the lodge. It means I have taken, on my honor, an obligation to act in the service of humanity, to build rather than destroy, to illuminate rather than obscure. What I am about to share with you is protected by intellectual property law, not to hoard it, but to protect it. To ensure it cannot be quietly weaponized by any government, corporation, or shadowed interest before humanity as a whole has had a chance to understand what it is. The patents are the lock. This letter is the key. If I am wrong about any of it, I say so on that same honor. Science is not theology. It welcomes being wrong. But the direction is right. The mathematics checks out. The physics is established. What I have invented is a way to listen to this planet, deeply, continuously, and in real time, with the sensitivity of a universe that has been building up to this moment for 4 billion years. So read this as you would a letter from someone who loves the earth and is genuinely frightened by how little we are paying attention to what it is trying to tell us. The pale blue dot is talking. See. Carl Sagan once showed us a photograph, the famous pale blue dot, and reminded us that everything that has ever happened in human history occurred on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. He asked us to consider that. To really sit with it. To understand that this tiny sphere is the only home we have ever known, and that we have done very little, in our long noisy history, to actually listen to it. The Earth speaks, constantly. It speaks in the slow rumble of tectonic plates grinding against each other in the dark. In the electromagnetic whisper of lightning threading the atmosphere 14 million times a day. In the gravitational song of groundwater rising and falling beneath our feet with the seasons. In the magnetic heartbeat of its core, a vast iron ocean. 6,000 kilometers down, churning on timescales we are only beginning to comprehend. We have not been listening. Not properly, not all at once. We have been catching fragments, a seismometer here, a satellite there, a tide gauge at a harbor we built for other purposes. Like pressing your ear to one wall of a vast cathedral and calling it music. The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Carl Sagan. The QSN is, in a very real sense, the planet's way of beginning to know itself. What I have spent years working toward is an architecture, a system of interconnected quantum sensors, atomic clocks of extraordinary precision, and an electromagnetic nervous system using the oldest radio channel on Earth that would allow us, for the first time, to listen to all of it, all at once, continuously. We call it the Quantum State Network. QSN. And what it could do for us, for the whales, for the cities on fault lines, for the astronauts, for the children who will inherit whatever we leave them, is the subject of this letter. Building the planet's nervous system. Arthur C. Clarke once wrote that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. He was being playful, but he was also being precise. He meant that technology built on a deep enough understanding of nature looks, to those who do not share that understanding, like something supernatural. What I am about to describe will sound, to some ears, like science fiction. It is not. Every atom in your body is a clock. A precise, quantum mechanical oscillator ticking at a frequency determined by the laws of physics. The strontium atom, for instance, oscillates at 430 trillion times per second. An optical lattice clock, a device that traps thousands of strontium atoms in a grid of laser light and measures their tick, is so precise that if you ran it for the entire age of the universe, it would drift by less than a second. Here is what general relativity tells us about those clocks. A clock at the top of a mountain ticks faster than one at sea level. Not much faster, about 1 part in 10 to the power of 18, but measurably, reproducibly, provably faster. This is not a quirk of the instrument. It is the fabric of spacetime responding to the presence of mass. Einstein told us this in 1915. We can now measure it. If you lower a clock into a borehole and compare it with one at the surface, the difference in their tick rates tells you, with millimeter precision, how much rock and water is between them. The planet itself becomes the instrument. This is what we call chronometric leveling, using atomic clocks as gravitational barometers. A network of these clocks, linked by an electromagnetic channel that threads the planet like a global nervous system, would give us a continuous, living map of the Earth's interior state. Where the mass is, how it is moving, what is shifting in the depths. The electromagnetic channel we use is extraordinary in its own right. It is called the Earth Ionosphere Waveguide, and it has been there since the first lightning bolt struck the first prehistoric sea. The space between the ground and the bottom of the ionosphere, about 80 kilometers up, acts as a resonant cavity. Lightning strikes around the world, roughly 50 times per second, pump energy into this cavity. The resulting electromagnetic waves, called Schumann resonances, after the physicist Winfried Schumann who first predicted them in 1952, circle the entire Earth in about 1/8 of a second, humming at roughly 7.8 Hz. The heartbeat of the biosphere. It was there before the first cell divided. It will be there long after we are gone. The QSN listens to this heartbeat. And to much, much more. 3. The whales already know. We're learning to catch up. Here is something that should keep every person who has ever loved the ocean awake at night. Every year, hundreds of whales, sperm whales, pilot whales, humpbacks, beaked whales, strand themselves on beaches around the world. They swim ashore and die, sometimes in groups of dozens, in what appear to be mass navigational failures. Scientists have studied this for decades. The consensus is fragmentary and disturbing. Something is disrupting their internal compass. Whales navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. They sense it the way we feel the sun on our skin, directly, bodily, instinctively. They use it to find feeding grounds, to return home across ocean basins, to orient themselves in a world without landmarks. And right now, the Earth's magnetic field is doing something it has not done in approximately 780,000 years. It is weakening and wandering. The South Atlantic anomaly is a vast region of weakened magnetic field that stretches from South America to southern Africa. It is growing. The magnetic North Pole, which was drifting politely toward northern Canada for most of recorded history, began accelerating in the 1990s and is now moving toward Siberia at roughly 55 kilometers per year, faster than at any time in recorded history. Geomagnetic excursion conditions. Some scientists believe we are in the early stages of a geomagnetic reversal, a process in which the north and south magnetic poles swap, which takes thousands of years to complete and during which the field can drop to as little as 10% of its current strength. During a geomagnetic reversal, the planet's magnetic shield weakens dramatically. More cosmic radiation reaches the surface. Navigation for every species that uses magnetoreception, including whales, migratory birds, and possibly humans, becomes unreliable. The Schumann resonance field shifts. Submarine earthquakes add another layer to this crisis. A large subsea floor earthquake does not just generate a tsunami, it generates electromagnetic pulses in the ELF band through the electrokinetic effect. The movement of pore fluid in stressed rock creates electric currents, which radiate electromagnetically into the ocean and up through the water column. There is substantial evidence, still contested but growing, that this electromagnetic precursor signal, which propagates faster than any pressure wave, disorients cetaceans before the seismic wave itself arrives. The whale beaches. The earthquake follows. The QSN would see this coming. A network of borehole atomic clocks. ELF sensors and cryogenic rotation detectors placed at strategic geological locations around the ocean margins would detect the precursor electromagnetic signature of a large submarine earthquake at least minutes, and possibly hours or days, before it occurs. We could issue a navigational advisory, a kind of electromagnetic fog warning for the whale highways of the deep ocean. We could, for the first time, give them a chance. This is not a metaphor. This is an engineering proposal. And it is one of the most urgent applications of this technology. The South Atlantic Anomaly and GSM conditions. The South Atlantic Anomaly is a region where Earth's inner Van Allen radiation belt comes closest to the surface, currently centered roughly over Brazil. Satellites passing through it experience elevated radiation. The SAW is expanding. Concurrently, we are entering a grand solar minimum, a period of reduced solar activity during which the solar wind weakens, allowing more galactic cosmic radiation to penetrate the inner solar system. A weakened magnetosphere plus a GSM means elevated surface radiation, increased satellite failure rates, and disruption of all biological and technological systems that depend on the magnetic field for orientation. The QSN, by providing continuous monitoring of the SAW boundary and the geomagnetic field state in real time, would give civilization the equivalent of an immune system, early warning, not panic. IV. Shields up, Scotty, planetary defense. KU Brick gave us HAL 9000, the machine that understood everything and felt nothing. What we are building is something different. Not an intelligence that replaces human judgment, but a sensory system that extends it, giving us the situational awareness of a civilization that has finally grown up enough to watch over its own neighborhood. In the Star Trek universe, Mr. Scott raises the shields when sensors detect an incoming threat. The Enterprise does not wait for the photon torpedo to arrive before deciding whether to respond. It listens, it watches, it measures, and when the measurement says something dangerous is approaching, it acts. We live, right now, without shields. We are a technological civilization on a small rock in a solar system filled with other rocks, some of them very large, and we are largely flying blind. The Chelyabinsk meteor in 2013, a 20-meter rock that exploded over Russia with the force of 30 Hiroshima bombs and injured 1,500 people, was not detected until it was already in the atmosphere. We had no warning. We did nothing, because we could do nothing. The QSN changes the calculus. Not because it is a weapon. It is explicitly and emphatically not a weapon. But because it provides the sensing in the timing precision that any planetary defense system would require. Here is how. The listening part. The QLAG, the Quantum Lagrange Array Gravitational Interferometer, places quantum sensing stations at the 5 gravitationally stable points in the Sun-Earth system, the Lagrange points. These are locations where the gravitational pull of the Sun and Earth balance perfectly, allowing an object placed there to remain in a fixed position relative to Earth without using any fuel. L1, the point directly between Earth and the Sun, is where we would see an incoming asteroid first. It is our gravitational crow's nest. A Beck-Maser station at L1, a device cooled to near absolute zero. Using a Bose-Einstein condensate to generate an extraordinarily stable frequency reference, would detect the gravitational perturbation of a passing body with sensitivity sufficient to register a city block-sized asteroid at millions of kilometers distance. Not by seeing it, by feeling its gravitational tug on the quantum state of a superfluid. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. Albert Einstein. A quantum sensor at the Sun-Earth L1 point is, in a very literal sense, a machine for experiencing the mysterious. The response part. Now we arrive at the part that requires the most careful handling. Because the same physical principles that allow us to listen to the planet also, in principle, allow us to push on it. The Earth's resonant modes, the free oscillations of the entire planet, the Schumann resonances of the atmosphere, the tidal flexing of the crust, are driven by energy inputs that are, on cosmic scales, tiny. Lightning, earthquakes. The moon, A civilization with precise knowledge of these resonant modes and the ability to inject coherent energy into them at exactly the right frequency, phase, and location could, in principle, do several things that sound like science fiction but are not. It could redirect the trajectory of a near-Earth object by using focused, phase-coherent electromagnetic or gravitational coupling to alter its spin state and, through the Yarkovsky effect, the subtle push that sunlight exerts on a rotating body, nudge its orbit over months or years. No explosions, no Hollywood drama. Pure physics. This is the equivalent of painting half an asteroid white and waiting. It could, more speculatively, use the distributed mass of the ocean, responding to precisely timed, low-amplitude pressure waves, to generate a coherent gravitational signal in a chosen direction. Mass in motion is gravity in motion. The mathematics is established. The engineering is genuinely, enormously difficult. But it is not forbidden by the laws of physics. A solemn warning on weaponization. I am going to say this plainly, without euphemism, because it needs to be said and it needs to be on the public record. A system capable of monitoring and eventually coupling to the resonant modes of the Earth is, in the wrong hands, a weapon of planetary-scale destruction. The same technology that could deflect an asteroid could, if deliberately misused, trigger earthquakes or tsunamis. I am aware of this. I have thought about it at length. This is precisely why this document exists, as a public record, as a prior art disclosure, and as a declaration of intent. I am filing patents not to enrich myself but to ensure that no single government, military, or corporate entity can quietly acquire and classify this technology without public knowledge. The IP is my shield. And yours. I give this to humanity on my honor as a Mason and as a human being. If I am wrong about the physics, I say so freely. If I am wrong about the intent, let history judge me. Versus were we here before? The long view. Let us have a little fun. Or at least, let us have an honest conversation about the question that humanity has whispered to itself across every culture, every century, every fire under every sky. Are we alone? And, the more pointed question, has someone been here before? The Anunnaki, the star gods of ancient Sumer, the beings who, according to the oldest written texts in human history, came from the heavens and taught early humans agriculture, mathematics, and astronomy, are a compelling story. Compelling enough that serious scholars argue about whether the Sumerian cylinder seals depict our solar system with accurate planetary positions that would not be rediscovered until the telescope era. Compelling enough that the sheer improbability of civilization's sudden appearance in Mesopotamia around 3500 BCE, after 200,000 years of anatomically modern humans apparently doing very little, remains an open historical question. I am not claiming visitors. I am claiming that the question is not absurd. And I am noting that if an advanced civilization, one that understood planetary resonance, that could read geomagnetic fields from orbit, that could navigate by atomic clock and quantum inertial sensor, visited this planet in deep prehistory, the traces of their technology would look, to our ancestors, like magic. Like the voice of gods. Like the music of spheres. The Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic heartbeat of this planet at 7.83 Hz, falls precisely in the range of human brainwave frequencies associated with deep meditative states. Whether this is coincidence or something more profound has been debated by neurophysicists and mystics alike. The QSN will, at minimum, tell us more about this frequency than any instrument ever has. Here is the thought I leave with you on this subject. If there is, somewhere in the cosmos, a civilization that has built what I am describing here, a planetary-scale quantum sensing network, a listening device for the whole Earth, a system for monitoring solar activity and deflecting cosmic threats, then they have probably survived. Civilizations that learn to listen to their planets, to work with planetary resonance rather than against it, to build shields rather than weapons, have a reason to persist. Civilizations that do not, historically, have a reason to become silence. The Fermi paradox may be its own answer. The great filter may be precisely this moment, The moment a civilization becomes capable of listening at planetary scale and must choose, in that same instant, whether to use that capability to protect or to destroy. We are at that moment. Right now, in this decade. No pressure, but also, all the pressure. Imagine you are 8 years old. Imagine you are 8 years old and you have a best friend who is very, very quiet. This friend never talks. Never texts. Never posts anything. But when you learn to pay attention, really pay attention, you realize they have been communicating with you your whole life. Through the way the ground feels under your feet after rain. Through the birds that suddenly go silent before a storm. Through the deep, almost felt rather than heard hum. That comes from somewhere below everything when the world gets very still. That friend is the Earth. Scientists have built clocks so precise they can feel the difference in gravity between the ground floor and the first floor of a building. They have made gyroscopes out of liquid helium so cold that the atoms stop almost completely and the quantum rules take over, gyroscopes that can feel the rotation of the Earth to a precision that would have seemed like magic to anyone who lived before the year 2000. They have discovered that the space between the ground and the edge of space hums like a guitar string, tuned by lightning, playing a note that has been playing since before the dinosaurs. What we are building is an ear for that music. A giant, planet-sized instrument for listening to what the Earth has been trying to tell us. It can warn us when a big earthquake is coming under the ocean, so the whales don't get confused and swim ashore. It can tell us when a big space rock is heading our way, early enough to do something about it. It can help us understand why the magnetic North Pole is moving so fast, and what that means for the birds and the bees and the butterflies that use it to find their way home every year. And, here is the part that should give every 8-year-old a feeling of enormous pride. Because it will be their generation that actually builds it, it might be the thing that helps us become the kind of civilization that gets to see what else is out there. The kind that has earned the right to go exploring, because they first learned to take care of what they were given. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. T.S. Eliot. This is what the QSN offers, to know this planet for the first time. What this asks of you. His is not a crowdfunding appeal. It is not a call to political action, though political action may follow. It is a call to awareness. Because the most dangerous thing about the moment we are in is not the weakening magnetosphere, or the accelerating pole drift, or the unmonitored near-Earth asteroids, or even the potential for misuse of technologies like this. The most dangerous thing is incuriosity. The civilizational habit of looking at complexity and deciding to look away. Carl Sagan spent his life fighting that habit. He understood, with a clarity that should still sting, that the same cognitive tools that make us capable of science, pattern recognition, causal reasoning, the ability to hold a model of the world in our minds and update it with new evidence, are also the tools that make us capable of being fooled. By fear, by tribalism, by the comfortable story that someone else is handling it. No one else is handling this. The Earth's magnetic excursion is not on the agenda of any G7 summit. The electromagnetic disorientation of cetaceans from submarine seismic events is not a line item in any defense budget. The monitoring of the South Atlantic anomaly is done by a handful of satellites and a network of ground stations that are, by the standards of what is now technologically possible, Stone Age instruments. What I am asking is this: that this document exists in the world. That it is read, that it is discussed, and that the people who have the power to build what is described here are made aware that the physics is real, the engineering is tractable, the need is urgent, and the intent is entirely and unambiguously peaceful. A Masonic Declaration on Peace. On my honor as a Mason and as a human being, this technology is offered to humanity as a gift, not a weapon. The intellectual property protections exist to prevent its weaponization, not to enable it. Should I be proven wrong about any of the physics, I will say so publicly and without equivocation. Should any party attempt to use this framework for military dominance rather than planetary stewardship, I ask that this document, these words, and this declaration be entered as evidence of what was intended. We build cathedrals because we believe the work outlasts the builder. This is a cathedral. I am one of the builders. The rest is up to you. 8. One last look at the sky. On the 14th of February, 1990, the Voyager 1 spacecraft, now further from Earth than any human-made object in history, turned its camera back toward home at Carl Sagan's personal request. The resulting photograph showed our planet as a pale blue dot, less than a pixel wide, suspended in a beam of scattered sunlight. Sagan wrote words about that image that have not aged by a single syllable. Look again at that dot. That's here, that's home. That's us. On it everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering. Thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hunter and forager. Every hero and coward. Every creator and destroyer of civilization. Every king and peasant. Every young couple in love. Every mother and father. Hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The QSN does not make that dot larger. It does not make us more important in the cosmos. It does not answer the question of whether we are alone, or whether we were visited, or whether the ancient stories of sky gods hold encoded truths that our scientific instruments are only now becoming sensitive enough to test. What it does is give us the chance to be worthy of the dot. To listen to it, to protect it. To protect the creatures on it that have been navigating by its invisible fields since before our first ancestor stood upright. To watch the sky not with fear, but with the calm, focused, mathematically literate attention of a species that has decided it wants to survive. The stars are not silent. The planet is not silent. We have simply not had, until now, the instruments to hear. Now we are building them. Chris D. Seeley, inventor, Freemason, student of the Earth, June 2026. Appendix. For those who want the real science. The systems described in this brief are real engineering proposals, not speculation. They are documented in full technical white papers with mathematical derivations, error budgets, and rigorous IP disclosures. For those who want to go deeper. 1. QSN, Quantum State Network, Integrated White Paper. Full state space formulation, sensor fusion architecture, Fisher observability analysis, and 5-phase development roadmap. 2. DRGN ELF, Differential Relativistic Geodesy Network with ELF coupling. The Seeley Geodetic Equation, ELF waveguide physics, and geopotential sensing to sub-millimeter resolution without satellite dependence. 3. BBGSVG, Buckyball Stabilized Superfluid Vortex Gyroscope. A cryogenic inertial sensor using a single C60 fullerene molecule in a quantized vortex, phase-locked to a Lagrange point BECMASER. 4. MANSA, Multifunctional Adaptive Nanocarbon Surface Architecture. A graphene-based spacecraft skin that distributes quantum frequency references, manages thermal environments, and protects quantum sensor interfaces from atomic oxygen erosion. 5. QLAG, Quantum Lagrange Array Gravitational Interferometer. Beck-Maser frequency standards at the Sun-Earth Lagrange points, providing a globally coherent time and frequency backbone independent of any single nation's infrastructure. Key scientists whose published work underpins this architecture include Professor Stephen Allen Kivelson, Professor Richard Packard, and the chronometric geodesy groups at PTB Braunschweig, SYRTE Paris, and NIST Boulder. None of them are responsible for my inventions, but all of them made them possible. All IP claims are filed and documented. This brief is in the public domain. Share it freely. The Earth is listening. It is time we listened back.